President Trump released a $4.8 trillion budget today that will reportedly propose cuts to social safety net programs and foreign aid while boosting spending on defense. Joining us now from Washington with more is Jessica Smith and House Budget Committee Chairman John Yarmuth. Jess.
Well, Miles, you know the White House budget is really an outline of the president's priorities. In the past, Congress has largely rejected the president's plans, and this year it does not look like things will be much different. Joining me now to talk about this is House Budget Committee Chairman John Yarmuth. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Sure.
You have called this budget destructive and irrational. Why is that?
Well, irrational because it relies on some assumptions that are really irrational. For instance, that we were going to have 3% growth in the economy every year for the next 15 years. We have not seen 3% growth during the Trump administration, so that's one way. Destructive because it cuts very, very important investments in our human capital in this country. Does damage to the environment, does damage to education, cuts housing funding, $180 billion of SNAP. I mean, we have people out there who need the government's assistance, and they're basically slashing a lot of that.
The White House does not want to say cuts. They say it is savings and reform proposals. What do you say to that argument that they're reforming these programs?
Well, that's not true. I mean, in actual dollar amounts, if the Trump budget were implemented, after 10 years, we would be spending $130 billion less on what we call the non-defense discretionary part of the budget, which is all domestic spending other than defense. That's in absolute dollar terms. So those are cuts.
I mean, how do you tackle trillion-dollar deficits? These cuts are largely unpopular, but how do you address that problem?
Well, you can start by not cutting taxes further, which is what the administration is proposing to do. Extending the tax cuts that expired in 2025, they extend them through the rest of the 10 years. We could actually undo some of the tax cuts that were done in 2017, the vast majority of which have benefited corporations and very wealthy Americans. So we can deal with the revenue side in dealing with deficits as well as the spending side.
I wanted to ask about one portion in particular, 21% cut in foreign aid. What do you think that means for our national security and our relationship with our allies?
Well, I remember when General Mathis said, if you cut the foreign aid budget, you're going to have to buy more bullets. And that's where we are. Diplomacy is an important part of our role in the world, and it's what keeps us from getting engaged in more hostilities and more pressure points around the world, which cost us even more. So the small investment in foreign aid, which is less than 1% of the budget, pays itself back many times over and has for a long time.
You mentioned that you thought the 3% growth is unrealistic. The White House says part of that projection is assuming that infrastructure will get done. Do you think this year could be the year that something gets done on infrastructure?
Well, it would be nice if it did. When we talk about deficits, and what I like to talk about is the deficit we have in investment in this country, and infrastructure is an important part of that. We not only have to repair a lot of infrastructure, we have to develop infrastructure to adapt to a very rapidly changing society and with technology and so forth. So, it would be nice if we can get a bipartisan deal. The president's budget talks about $200 billion over 10 years, and they ask cities and towns and states to match that 80%. To the 20%. I don't think that's going to work, but at least they showed that they're interested in doing something on infrastructure, and we'd love to work with them on it.
All right, I think we have to leave it there, but Chairman John Yarmuth, thank you so much.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.